A world leader arrives, but beneath the grand welcome, a secret is about to unfold.
This isn't just luggage. It's a $250,000 secret, carried in plain sight.
Behind closed doors, a negotiation begins. But it's not about policy, it's about payment. Every flight has a cost, but this one comes with a price that can't be paid by credit card. Cold, hard cash. The currency of a nation, reduced to a backroom deal.
From 40,000 feet, the world looks different. But on the ground, reality bites.
In the 21st century, the most powerful weapon isn't a bomb. It's a bank. Cut off from the world, a nation builds its own system, a digital fortress.
Every action has a reaction. For every powerful move, there's a price paid by the people.
This is more than a single event. It's a move in a global game, with the world as the board. One currency holds the power today. But for how much longer? A leader departs, leaving behind a story of power, pride, and a briefcase full of questions.
Imagine this scene. The leader of, well, a global superpower arrives for a really high-stakes summit. You got the red carpet rolled out, all the diplomatic ceremony you'd expect. Then, kind of behind the scenes, quietly, their delegation is forced to pay a huge amount, $250,000, for jet fuel. And they have to pay in cold, hard cash.
Yeah, it sounds completely unbelievable, like something out of a movie.
Exactly, like a spy thriller plot point. But it actually happened. So today we're going to dig into that incredible incident. Russian President Vladimir Putin's delegation paying $250,000, that's roughly Rs 2.2 crore, in cash, just to refuel their jets.
And this was at Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson in Anchorage, Alaska, August 15th, 2025.
If this works, it could break every encryption standard on the planet in under a minute.
This isn't just about seeds. It's about owning the future of food for the entire world.
Right. We're drawing on various reports, analyses, including some really fascinating details that came out from U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Our mission for you today is, well, to unpack this truly bizarre event. Why the cash? What does it tell us about global financial power? And, what are the longer-term implications for all of us?
Exactly. Because this wasn't just some minor logistical problem, was it? It was, frankly, a deeply humiliating logistical failure. And it really laid bare these hidden realities of global power dynamics. There's this incredible paradox going on.
What do you mean?
Well, you have the public diplomacy, the smiles, the handshakes, contrasted with this very private, very humbling financial struggle. It just shows how deep economic leverage can reach, even into these highly protected diplomatic moments.
It really does.
They're in. They've breached the financial network's firewall. We have seconds to push them back.
Identity confirmed. No passport, no visa. Your body is your passport now. Welcome to the country.
Okay, let's zoom in on the actual scene. It's August 15th, 2025, Anchorage, Alaska, Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson.
High stakes.
Incredibly high stakes. You've got U.S. President Donald Trump meeting Russian President Vladimir Putin. And the main topic, the ongoing conflict in Ukraine.
Right, a crucial meeting.
The Russian delegation comes in with this fleet, 3 jets, including Putin's main presidential plane. They were only actually on the ground for about 5 hours total. The summit itself lasted nearly 3 of those hours.
So relatively quick turnaround.
Yeah. And then came the bombshell. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, talking to NBC News, he's the one who revealed it. He said the Russian delegation had to offer to pay in cash for that fuel, $250,000 worth.
Can you just picture that? Offering a massive stack of cash for jet fuel on a state visit.
It's extraordinary.
It creates such a striking paradox, doesn't it? As I said, the public show, the red carpet, all the signs of respect for a head of state. But underneath that, this private, almost embarrassing logistical mess. It's like the U.S. was running 2 summits at the same time.
Oh, one for the cameras.
Exactly. Broadcasting dialogue. Another one, maybe for the accountants, sending this really clear, unforgiving message about financial power. You play by our financial rules or you don't play.
Absolutely. And think about it having to physically transport that much cash just for a routine thing like refueling state aircraft. It just screams vulnerability, doesn't it?
It really does.
It forced a global superpower to operate almost like, I don't know, some kind of shadow economy player. It feels like a throwback.
A logistical throwback, that's a good way to put it. It shows how effective, but also how incredibly inconvenient a modern financial blockade can be. You know, all the advanced tech on the plane, but you're stuck paying like it's the 19th century.
That's not a standard repeater. It looks like a listening post. Someone is tapping the world's internet.
So the big question for you listening is probably, okay, why? Why the cash? Why couldn't they just, swipe a card?
Yeah.
Was the Russian embassy's bank account frozen or something?
Well, that's the core of it. The reason, according to Secretary Rubio anyway, was the result of nearly a decade of intensifying financial warfare.
A whole decade.
Yeah. Rubio was quite clear. They couldn't use the American banking system because of longstanding U.S. sanctions. These weren't new sanctions slapped on just for this visit.
Right, they go way back.
They started way back in March 2014. Remember, after Russia annexed Crimea and its actions in Ukraine began escalating, the whole point of these sanctions was explicitly to impose a cost on Russia.
And they targeted key sectors.
Key sectors, exactly. Defense companies, major state-owned banks, energy giants we all know like Gazprom, Rosneft. The aim was to squeeze them financially.
30% of the world's oil passes through this choke point. Our job is to make sure it never closes.
And here's where it gets really interesting for the mechanics of it all. One of the biggest moves in this financial war, as I'm sure many of you know, was cutting off Russian banks, partially at least, from SWIFT.
Yes. Well,
The global messaging network that basically underpins international finance.
Yeah.
Cutting them off was like severing nerves in the global financial system.
it
Right?
really was a huge move. And, it raises a curiosity point. What was Russia's response to this? I mean, people called the SWIFT cutoff a financial nuclear weapon.
Right, designed to cause maximum economic pain.
Exactly. But Russia didn't just take it lying down. They clearly anticipated something like this because back in 2014, the same year the first sanctions hit, they started developing their own alternative.
They're on SWIFT.
Sorta. It's called the System for Transfer of Financial Messages, or SBFS. And alongside that, they launched their own domestic payment card system, MIR. This was all about achieving what they call digital sovereignty.
It's trying to insulate themselves.
Precisely. And reports suggest SBFS is actually handling almost all of Russia's domestic financial traffic now, and they're trying to expand it internationally, connecting with countries like Iran and Turkey.
So it's a classic case of unintended consequences, isn't it? You try to punish and isolate, and you inadvertently push them to build their own parallel system.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's often how these things play out.
So we see this timeline, 2014, initial sanctions, 2022, more sanctions, the SWIFT cutoff, then boom, 2025, this very public, very awkward cash payment in Alaska. A clear escalation path.
And what's really fascinating here as we look at this Alaska incident is, well, it's not exactly a new kind of geopolitical move.
How so?
History is just full of examples of nations using economic tools, financial leverage to exert power. It's an old game, really.
Like the Cold War. That feels like a grand-scale version.
Absolutely. Think about the U.S. Marshall Plan rebuilding Western Europe to strengthen allies against Soviet influence. That was financial statecraft on a huge scale.
And the Soviets had Comecon.
Exactly, their own economic bloc. Or go even further back, after World War I. The Dawes Plan. This bizarre circular system where American banks loaned money to Germany.
So Germany could pay reparations to the Allies.
Who could then pay their war debts back to the U.S. It shows the creative length nations go to manage these huge financial pressures and obligations.
There's that ancient quote from Cyrus, isn't there? Everything is worth what its purchaser will pay for it.
That fits perfectly here.
In Alaska, access to the U.S. banking system, something normally routine, was essentially priceless to the Russians at that moment.
Yeah.
But they weren't allowed to purchase it, except with, well, actual cash.
Right. And while handing over $250,000 in cash is technically legal in the U.S. for a state delegation on a presidential visit, it becomes this powerful symbol.
The symbol of what?
Of diplomatic isolation. It speaks a language of, frankly, distrust and exclusion. It says, you're not part of our trusted financial club. It kind of elevates the power of the petty, showing how even seemingly minor bureaucratic hurdles can become major statements of geopolitical standing.
And here's a kind of disturbing potential link, a twist point maybe. This isn't just about Putin's plane needing fuel.
Oh.
Some analyses we looked at connect this logistical difficulty to a maybe broader pattern of issues within Russia, particularly around aviation. They mentioned things like the investigation into the Prigozhin plane crash in 2023, or the 2025 findings about the downing of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17, where the UN Aviation Council pointed blame at Russia.
So, suggesting consequences ripple out. That difficulties in one area like finance might reflect or exacerbate problems in others, like aviation safety or military logistics.
Possibly. It hints at a potential systemic strain where the impact of sanctions and isolation isn't just confined to bank accounts.
That's a sobering thought. Ultimately, though, this specific incident, the cash payment itself, it feels less about the literal money.
And more about the story.
Exactly. More about a battle of narratives, a contest over who gets to define what this event means to the world.
Okay, so let's look at those narratives. First, the American side, strongly articulated by Secretary Rubio. The argument from the pro-sanctions camp is pretty straightforward. This cash payment. It's proof.
Yeah.
Clear, tangible evidence that the sanctions are working, that they're biting.
A non-military victory.
Right. A demonstration of U.S. financial power, achieving results without firing a shot.
But, and this is a crucial curiosity point, if the sanctions are so effective, why hasn't the war in Ukraine stopped? That's the uncomfortable question, isn't it?
It is. And Rubio himself kind of conceded that point. He admitted sanctions often take months and sometimes years to bite.
Right.
And that they might not immediately change the course of a war. So it complicates the victory narrative quite a bit. It shows economic pressure is powerful, yes, but it's often a slow, blunt instrument. Its ability to achieve huge strategic goals quickly. That's still very much up for debate.
Okay, so what about the other side? The Russian counter-narrative.
Well, according to reports, Russian state media was. The word used was jubilant.
Jubilant about having to pay cash. Not about the cash specifically, but about the summit itself. They completely ignored the payment issue, or downplayed it, and focused entirely on the red carpet welcome.
Framing it as proof they aren't isolated.
Precisely. Their narrative was, look, the U.S. president is meeting with our president. We're still major players on the world stage, engaging at the highest level. It was presented as proof that Russia can't be truly isolated, despite the war, despite the international arrest warrant for Putin.
Interesting spin. Did they do anything else to push that narrative?
They did. A little piece of soft power theater. The Russian delegation actually presented an Alaskan man with a brand new Ural motorcycle.
A motorcycle? Why?
State media framed it as this gesture of goodwill, a symbol of friendship, and maybe more pointedly, a nod to Alaska's history as a former Russian territory. It was Russia trying to use attraction and shared history to counter the sting of the financial sanctions.
So you've got the hard power of the financial bloc meeting the soft power attempt with the motorcycle and the summit itself.
It's a perfect illustration of what Joseph Nye calls smart power, isn't it? Combining hard power tools, like sanctions, with soft power tools, like diplomacy and cultural gestures.
Yeah, it really brings to mind that famous quote from former Secretary of Defense James Mattis. If you don't fund the State Department fully, then I need to buy more ammunition.
Exactly. It underscores how vital these diplomatic and financial tools are. They're not just alternatives to military action. They're crucial components of a state's overall power strategy.
So this brings us to a deeper question, really. What does paying $250,000 in cash actually symbolize for a major nation in the 21st century?
That's a great question. What does it mean?
Well, if you think about money's basic functions, right? Medium of exchange, store value, unit of account. For a state actor, being forced into a massive cash transaction like this, it signals a fundamental breakdown in that system. It screams lack of trust. It means you're excluded from the normal digitized global networks that handle almost everything now.
It's a very public admission of being locked out.
Yeah, a profound loss of face on the international stage. It's like, I don't know, showing up to a high-tech global finance conference and being told you have to pay your entrance fee with a bag full of coins. It just looks primitive, out of step.
And there's a really critical implication here, a potential long-term consequence.
Which is?
When a dominant power like the U.S. weaponizes the dollar, weaponizes access to systems like SWIFT, well, it gives every other nation a very strong incentive to build alternatives.
To find ways around U.S. financial control.
Exactly. We already talked about Russia's SPFS and Mir card. They developed those because of sanctions pressure. They aren't the only ones looking for financial independence.
So an incident like this, the Alaska cash payment, because it was so public, so vivid, It almost acts as a global advertisement for de-dollarization, doesn't it?
It could certainly be seen that way. A big flashing sign saying maybe relying entirely on the US-led financial system isn't such a safe bet. It encourages that move towards sovereign payment systems.
It makes you think about Fareed Zakaria's idea of a post-American world. Not necessarily a world where America collapses, but one where the gap between the U.S. and other rising powers shrinks.
That's a very relevant concept here. So while this Alaska incident was, without a doubt, a short-term humiliation for Russia, in the longer run, it might actually be seen as another small signpost pointing towards a new, more multipolar world, a world where these kinds of financial workarounds, these alternative systems, become more common. And that gradually could erode the unique global power the U.S. dollar has held for so long.
So wrapping this up, the Alaska incident really serves as this fascinating microcosm, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A snapshot of a much larger global struggle playing out.
It really does.
You have this stark paradox. The diplomatic niceties, the red carpet, clashing directly with this underlying financial humiliation. Public dialogue versus private economic coercion.